Welcome back, one and all, to the Interstice podcast, episode 12. So whether you're here on the channel, tuning in through Spotify or Apple iTunes, thank you for being here. Thank you for bearing with me over the course of what was in excess of a month, because I was moving to a new apartment, a new job. Everything was in upheaval, but now I'm settled, basically. I'm about have a quick look at the calendar here. How many weeks in? Tomorrow was the end of the third week that I would have been employed at this new job. And what a time it has been. Lots to reflect on, lots to consider, lots of growth to be had, I think, from these new experiences I've been having. A whole new cast of characters. So usual plan. We'll go through the first half. I'm going to wax poetic on a couple things that are relevant and interesting to me. And then for the second, we'll head into the email section and look at what people have sent me recently, or not so recently, because I haven't had a chance to actually get back to this. That said, I'll preface this whole thing with, if you would like to have your questions answered, please don't hesitate to write me at davetrippin@gmail.com. It's in the description of this video, or you can listen back at what I had just said. And all likelihood is I still don't get dozens and dozens of emails. I probably get about a dozen if I'm lucky. So it's very likely that you will see your questions featured here, should you write in. Having said that, let's get into it. So I think one of the obvious place to start is the new position that I'm working and its differences and the things that have struck me that have occurred as I've gone down that rabbit hole. So first of all, if you're tuning in more recently, it's a private school. So that's a big change. Ever since I've been in Japan, it's always been the public system that I've been a part of. So that was massive for me to jump into something like that. And the way that I sort of positioned myself when I moved into it was to say during the interviews that when I looked through their value system, the priorities that they had for teaching the kids, it was in fact really, really similar to my junior high school experience, because back in Canada, by the miracle of me being super large for my age, I got a rugby scholarship to go to a quite famous international private school on Vancouver Island. And it was so formative for me. Like, I really do value the experiences that I had there. And when I looked at what they were doing, I really valued that in a similar way. I knew as well that going into this, where the public school is very often what you make of it, but it is much easier for it to be there a quite lax experience, even when you were in a position like I was, where I was an elementary school teacher and everything is primarily your duty. It's up to you to make and do everything. Now, that said, I kind of got into a routine. I was familiar with it. I knew what to do. And if I'm being totally honest and bearing my soul here on the podcast for people to reflect on their own experiences, I would say that I'd run into a wall in terms of fulfillment, because elementary school relationships with the students, they're good. And there were some fantastic kids there, but of course you're waiting for the but, and the but will come. The kids, aside from perhaps grade 6, the final year that they're there, they're children. And nothing wrong with that. Kids got to grow up. Kids got to be kids. That's great. It's a wonderful time in our lives to do that when we are that age. But in terms of you feeling like you're really connecting with them, it's only for me, at least, my personal experience was when it was a grade 6 class, and oftentimes you could not rely on the fact that that grade 6 class was always the best. They were very mixed in the years that I was there. And I was at a quite infamous school. I think it would be no overstepping what it was that I experienced there to say that I had the most, the school with the most behavioral issues of any in the area that I was stationed at, maybe that's better to say. And so if that were the case, then you could go back to the grade 5s. And I was lucky in my last year. They were amazing. But still, the depth of the relationships is something that I was not drawing as much fulfillment from. And now moving into this next school, and where it's basically junior high school and upwards. It's junior high and high school. I have one high school aged class that I will teach this year. And it's really cool. I can feel it immediately that the relationships that I will have here will be so much shaped by the fact that the kids are older. Now, don't get me wrong. They can still be shy. That's going to be there. Kids aren't, especially when you teach a larger amount of them, there's going to, statistically speaking, be that. But I can see immediately right away that it's going to be more fulfilling the relationships I have. Now, something else that I really, really enjoy, which is a change socially for me, which it doesn't even dawn on me until I'm actually there spending a few weeks at the school. And that was to have a little more easily accessible camaraderie. For me, I almost had kind of like relationships in the past. I treasured them. They were great. For example, the tea lady at my old school, Angel, Tenshi, I think is the name for Angel. I always called her my angel. She was lovely, and when I left for this job, she gave me some beautiful pottery, this like handmade stuff, really heartwarming. But in terms of my peers, like immediate colleagues, I would always talk to her, and she was so kind, but I couldn't. It's a different kind of relationship, we'll say that. And now, at this new position, there are maybe 8 foreign teachers dedicated to the subject of English. We have a specific department dedicated to us. We're sort of a debate. We're more like a language department as opposed to being directly dedicated to English, whereas English focuses, of course, on speaking and writing, but there's a heavy, heavy emphasis in the Japanese school system towards the grammar. Fair enough. They're understanding the inner workings of the language. But our department emphasizes communications. It's called an oral communications department. That's what we have. So where we may touch on grammar, we're going to emphasize the communicative element of the languages. It's cool because they're getting those 2 pillars. It's not just one or the other, and there's not an overemphasis, which can so often happen because of the test taking that is done here on the grammatical side of things. And I think that makes them more engaged, I would say, with the grammatical side because they can apply it and they get some sort of reward from that aside from like a mark on a page. They can actually use the grammar that it is that they're learning. And as I say, there are these 8 people in my department. I think it's about 8. And it's so strange for me to go into a workplace where there are 8 other native speakers of the language. That's really, really cool. As international as ever, that's awesome as well. I like that the people I'm interacting with who work there, they're from all around the world. And I really like that. And I really enjoy that social aspect. Now, in recent days, that's something that has changed because I'm glad to say that my school's actually proactive. My whole setting, where probably wherever you're listening to this, your schools are closed. Our school shut down as well, but we are doing online lessons. So I'm not in the office so much anymore. I'm not at the school, so not office, school. I'm there to plan things when I absolutely have to be. But aside from that, I will be here and I'll do a streaming thing and I'll teach the kids that way so the kids can be safe. I can be safe. We can take the correct precautions given the current state of the world. But that it should not be understated how cool it has been so far that I have this additional social aspect. I really like that. And I didn't realize how much I missed it because you can finish a class and then have a native conversation in English, reflecting on what it is that you'd like to do afterwards. I will say, as a little like bonus add-on to this, it's worth mentioning this school's English speakers, not just the foreign teachers there like myself, who are there specifically to teach English. I'm really, really impressed with the whole level of English generally at the school. The number of Japanese teachers who speak really good English is quite impressive. And I mean all the more so for the fact that these teachers, they don't have to speak English. It's not like they're even in the English department. It just so happens to be that they speak English really, really well. So it makes me more curious about their life stories and why exactly it is, because like I talk about in other videos, that learning Japanese is in no way, you might think that it would be a necessity here in Japan. It is not. You could get away with not speaking Japanese here if you really wanted to avoid it. And for any Japanese national, there's no reason that you should, as popular as it is to like speak English and learn that language of the world, you don't have to learn it. No way, no how. I know far more Japanese people who haven't, and no fault to them. It's a different life, so on and so forth. But the standard of English, be it within the department that I work for or the other English teachers, is really, really high. And that's cool. Got a lot of respect for that. So what other things are different? What other things are momentous, tumultuous changes for me? Well, one of which I've touched on, but now I can actually speak to the experience in the class, is that I'm a licensed teacher now. A part of teaching at this school was them looking at your work history, and if so, deeming it up to quality. Then they would sponsor you getting a proper teacher's license. The reason for this being that if you're going to teach in this school, you're not doing the public school method, which is to have you, especially in brackets, if you're in Shogaku, an elementary school, as T2, teacher 2. That's a whole other can of worms. We could touch on that for like a minute or two, but you are the teacher of the class and there is no one there assisting you. And if you're going to do that, of course, you need a teaching license. And so I have a teaching license here. And what has that been like? Well, it's awesome. I especially appreciate it because I was kind of doing it before, like 90%, where in the elementary schools, because they so rely on the foreign teachers there to do absolutely everything, although by name you are teacher 2 and the Japanese teacher there is supposed to be T1, they aren't. You're T1. So I was already ready for it, but you didn't have complete command of the class because you have this other teacher that's backing you up. And that was often, as much as it could be to your benefit, it could be to your detriment, because weak teachers, when the kids so look to them for a source of their, I would say direction, I don't want to say even inspiration. If you had a weak teacher in the class, then it would easily fall apart. This is saying, again, talking about the public school system, compared to had you just had the class to yourself and they didn't have the confusion of this very inept, very unenthusiastic teacher that was bringing them down. Now here, in this new setting, well, it's all on you, for better or worse. I'm going to be the one that if the kids aren't listening, if they're not responding well, then it's my fault. But I'm given more responsibility and power that they should respect your authority while they're in your class. And it's not like you have to rule over them with an iron fist, but I think them knowing that you are the head teacher of the class and you're the one who's going to provide all direction now doesn't split their attention. And that's really, really good for you being able to do your job properly. And I've really enjoyed that. Now, I should say this is kind of a funny thing that all my lessons so far that I've done are only online, because very quickly things like every single day it was developing. It was like, okay, we're not gonna do this ceremony. Okay, the kids aren't gonna come in till now. Okay, the kids aren't gonna come in. Okay, we're doing online lessons. All I've done is online lessons, but it doesn't matter if you're doing online lessons and you or not. What matters is that you are the one entirely in control of the content of the class. And that marked change has been so interesting to me. And I would say today really topped that off. I say that because today I keep talking about how it's cool if you can have brand new, unique experiences no matter how long you've been in Japan. I had that today, and it was because one of my tasks I've been given for this year is I'm responsible for what in my school they call an advanced class. And in these advanced classes, these kids will often have lived abroad, and to some degree, you would say that they had fluency, that they were bilingual. Now, that doesn't mean that, obviously they still need your guidance. They need to improve, even though they are, as I say, bilingual or fluent, because there's many different levels of fluency. But because they're at that level, where I talk about relationships mattering in light of how old someone may or may not be, well, if somebody is more fluent in the language, then of course, you were going to be able to forge a better relationship with that person. And I found, this is my own personal observation, that if you are someone who has lived abroad when you were very young and through whatever forces have been able to get some mastery of the language, there's a real fascinating spark to these kinds of kids who do this. And in this class today, it was no different. The kids there, well, at a base level, quantitatively, they are exceptional. The fact that they're so young and they already speak 2 languages. Perhaps this is more common in Europe because of close borders and stuff, but not for me, not in North America. But there was such a brightness to these kids. It was wonderful. Not a big class, and that's even better. I think I've mentioned before in the past, the classes at this school are smaller. Another huge benefit, reason that I like being there. They're between usually 12 to 15 kids. In this advanced class, there's 5 of them. So you can imagine where it's all about being able to provide better one-on-one experiences with students to be able to address their needs, their strengths, that kind of thing. Well, when you have 5 students, believe me, you can zero in pretty well on that student's strengths and weaknesses. And I would say a willingness, a desire to learn comes from a good relationship. I won't remember the quote exactly, but kids learn more from who you are than what you do, or something like that. It's essentially saying that they're going to learn from how you carry yourself, your personality, less the exact content of what it is that you're teaching them, especially the younger that somebody is, because you won't even... There's one teacher, I don't remember a single thing that I was ever taught by him, but I remember him, and he was a great man, and he was an inspiration for me to like what kindness looked like, what kindness felt like, what being around a person who was a good person was like. But I should say as well that because you can develop that better relationship, that's the precursor to them learning more. Because once the relationship's good, then there's no baggage. You just move ahead and you're excited to, and you want to, because that person you really like, and to earn their favor or to be viewed favorably by them is something that you would seek after. We all want to be accepted. We all want to be loved. I guess that's I don't want to, why does that have to be the extreme? Yeah, we all want to be loved. We all want to be accepted. And once we are, then the way that information passes between those two people, because there's trust, it flows more freely. And these kids, it was like, I messaged one of the other guys that I work with. He's an old salty veteran. He's been there. This is how you can tell the school's pretty good. He's been there for, I think, probably over 15 years. He was a licensed teacher out of Toronto. Great guy. I could tell right away. I was like, this guy's got a heart of gold. This was cool. Like I said, the new cast of characters here is really, really cool. I like the people that I work with. And it's not saying everybody's all lovey-dovey. Like there's some people who are like quite rough around the edges, but in a way that I enjoy. Like I don't think everybody has to be amicable or gregarious. I think the people who are a little bit more the Eeyores of the world, you can still be an Eeyore and you can be a virtuous kind of person. It's interesting. A chance for compassion as well, because you can see like whatever failures you might observe around yourself in others that you're interacting with, provided there's this benchmark of like you're a good person, then it's all good, because you know that they're contending with a benchmark of your bullshit that they're having to put up with. So there's some kind of reciprocity going on there. So I've never had an experience like that. I've never taught kids who have gone overseas. I've never taught kids who had basic fluency. Like I'm still careful when I'm speaking to them how quickly perhaps some of the vocabulary that I'm using. I'm conscientious of that. But if I speak evenly, if I speak clearly, if I watch as I say my vocabulary, these kids aren't going to have a problem. And it's so cool right away too. I know, like, I like how I'm constantly surprised. Like this is only the first lesson, right? So I'm really, really only getting a sense at the base level of what it is that they're capable of. And I love seeing how skill differently manifests itself. So there's one kid in the class and he's super enthusiastic. And I really, really like that. And I don't know, it's like, this is like your eyes start to well up and you're like, I am now, I don't try and fight it. I am a middle age until we move that age further. If it were, actually maybe I could say 40 is real middle age. I'm 35 now. Let's pretend 40 is middle age. But as you approach that time, I don't know what happens exactly. Probably as you accumulate experiences and you think about sharing those experiences in a deeper level, kids seem like something possible for you. Not for everyone, but I've thought about them. I'm not against kids. For a guy who's ended up being unmarried and 35, I'm not against them. And when I'm in a class like this and the kids are so impressive, you're just like, oh man, I bet these parents are so proud. I bet they're so proud of these kids. And they're so filled with personality. That's what attracts me to the idea of having kids, is this little, obviously not you. They are of you, but they are not you, to quote Khalil Gibran. And how cool it is to watch a personality develop, and to see when a personality is so developed at an early age. That's another wow, that's a real wow factor. And I could, there was wonderful things. Like I was asking this one guy and he was like, well, I was asking them hobbies, because the first class was really for them to get to know me, for me to get to know them, that kind of thing, right? So he was saying that he really likes movies, and he really likes Jim Carrey, and he really likes Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I was like, that's awesome. These are and also who, again, they're proud of him. I'm proud of these parents. Who are these parents that are showing them these great classic movies from these great actors? And so I asked him, what Arnold Schwarzenegger movie do you like? What's your favorite one? And he said, oh, well, that would be, that's Terminator. I like Terminator. I'm just like, this kid is the shit. He's so cool. And I was like, 1 or 2. And he was like, oh, 2. And I was like, that's a good choice. It is, it came from 1, but 2 is the better, in my opinion. And we can just forget every single Terminator after that. It's pointless. But that was so cool. And I liked his effusiveness and how animated he was. And then there was just this angel, another Tenchi in the class, this girl who I could tell from the others, I don't think that her ability was very far behind. Nothing actually indicated that her ability was any less than the other students, but you might think so because she was shy. But I found that I could make her laugh, and I could bring her out of her shell a little bit. And when I did get her talking more, I mean, it was one of these things. It's like this smile on this girl would it would melt her father's heart. I was just like, I was having all sorts of like hilarious, oh, you know, I'm old now and I guess no kids for me. But damn it, they're cute and they're good people. But that's fine. I think it's a wonderful thing, if only to observe. And hey, in that weird way, I get that experience. I probably got more experience with kids than a lot of parents, in the fact that at least a different kind. I don't deal with a lot of the ugliness that they do, to be fair. Let's not self-aggrandize too much my role in these kids' lives. But I do spend a lot of time with them because they're in class and the parents are at work. But yeah, all that like hard raising that goes on for a parent, the sleepless nights, all that stuff, I don't have to do it. Arguably, I'm spending kind of the cool time with the kids where they're like learning cool shit, as opposed to dealing with the more like nitty gritty that parents have to do. So not to view this through rose-tinted glasses, so to speak. But it was so cool to feel inspired by these kids. Now, I think it's great. And I think it's great to be an inspired teacher. And I don't think that it's the responsibility of students to make a teacher feel inspired. It should be, I would think, as it's your job to inspire them. That stands to reason in my mind. That's totally fair. But does it hurt if the kids inspire you? Does it hurt if you, because of the way that they are personally, that you want to do that much better? Of course not. It's a feedback loop. It's that you bring them positive energy, they reflect it back at you, everyone's winning. And I can feel that right away. It's really, really, really cool. Like coming out of this, I want to do a good job anyways. I haven't even touched on all the crazy overtime I'm doing. But actually, let's move on then to that idea, which I really, really enjoy. This may continue into the second half of the podcast. Talking about how those who have a why can endure any how. And I've thought about how I approach this year going into this new job, my why. And my why was, I want to have a just cause. I want to totally embrace this teaching because I am now a licensed teacher. I want to go full bore with this, all in, and I don't care. I will throw myself on the sword. And in doing so, I speculated, I thought that perhaps because I've chosen to do this and because it's my volition, my choice, that then the work will be more enjoyable. Now, that might seem like a no-brainer, but it can be a very difficult decision to make, because to make that decision, you're like, okay, so I'm going to do so much work. Do I really want to do that much work? And there is that voice inside your head that's like, fuck that. Be lazy, do whatever you want. And it's always there. It doesn't go away. It's still there even as I find fulfillment in this. But I can say now, having done this, I've only done it for 3 weeks, so this isn't a great test of perseverance yet, but how hard I've worked in this time is peerless, unprecedented for myself anyways, peerless to myself. And how good I feel coming home after these long days is wonderful. And it's crazy where I think to myself, I work hard in different ways. Like at the other job, when I would finish, I'm editing videos, I'm going to the gym, I'm doing stuff to push myself. But now it's all levels. It's creatively, it's physically, and it's at my job. And I've been very happy in Japan. And I think to compare happinesses as like just equal, it's kind of silly, because I got too excited and I forgot that there's a 30-minute recording time on my camera. Luckily, I stopped shortly thereafter. So I was cut off saying that things shouldn't be happiness should not be compared like to like, because you're at different points. and you have different goals, and achievements mean different things to you. But I will say, firing on all cylinders, going hard in every single aspect, it's been really, really rewarding. I like it a lot. And that's cool, because that means that we can put out like a crazy effort, and that I feel like it gives me more energy. The only thing that I feel I need to be really, really diligent on, two things actually, because it's the fuel and the recovery. It's not the output that I have so much trouble with, but you gotta sleep. Tell this to anybody. We all need different amounts, but well, actually not. We all need good sleep. We all need good sleep, and I would say no less than 8 hours a night, 7 to 8 hours a night. And for me, I need more than that, especially because I go to the gym. But I get a good sleep, I eat well, and then that fuels all the rest of this. And then for the accomplishments that you have, for the feeling of like how this relieves anxiety as well has been interesting for me, because I think that there was always some degree in my work before of anxiety because I wasn't putting as much into it as I could, but then you're not quite so sure of yourself. There were times when I was, but there were many times where I wasn't, because I didn't put in quite the level of preparation that was required to be 100%. And now that I've so overshot that, I feel so good. Now, is it necessarily a solution for everyone that all you got to do is stay at work until like 7 o'clock every night? And there's your solution. Now you don't need to be anxious. Well, for some people, that might not be the solution, and I'm not trying to sell it to you like that either. But I have noticed definitely it's kind of this inverse, where the harder I've worked and now the less anxious I feel, which is really cool, regardless of each individual person's experience of something like that. So now I wanted to go into some more random topics, because I'm getting that out of my system, all this talk about being at the new job. But there was something that I thought was really cool here. This is from one of my Patreon supporters. Really appreciate him, old Mr. Nuns. And he wrote to me recently about this topic where he's like, hey, maybe this would be cool. So says, since we last spoke, I managed to get myself an interview for JET program. That's awesome. Way to go, Nuns. And then I proceeded to muck it up. Okay, I should read these before I read them. Okay, I'm an alternative candidate. Nothing wrong with that. One of the best teachers that I've ever known was an alternative candidate, and then she eventually got into JET. And she got her master's in music therapy, and cool girl. One of the best Japanese teachers I've had. I inherited from her. Lovely, lovely girl. Where was she from? Was it Taiwan or Singapore? I can't remember. Either way, I'm seriously looking at alternatives. There's that word again, to JET. Okay, well, hey, whatever you got to do. One thing that I think would be a good topic for discussion in your podcast might be Gaijin Elitism. I know you've touched on this in the past, but the internet, especially the JET Reddit, has a lot of these "I'm a better Gaijin than you" types. Okay, it is an interesting topic, because so this is a Japan-centric podcast, right? Life in Japan. That's what we talk about here. But the truth is that I think so many elements that you find in any workforce, in any job, in any profession, it's all human, and so they're all transferable. So this, for example, this Gaijin Elitism, I think it's this sort of, it's just an old school form, or it's like a new school form of, once I was a greenhorn, now I'm an elite, or now I'm, throw away that word elite. Now I'm actually acquainted with, I've done the hazing, I've done the trial by fire. Now that I have confidence, I'm going to forget absolutely all of my struggles to have reached this point, and I'm going to turn back with vitriol on those who I should recognize that it's so ironic when I had to go through all of this and I sucked and I hated when people directed it at me. Now I'm going to direct it at them. You see it a lot, I think, in varsity sports, where people are coming up through a program, and they're the B team, and then you have the A team looking down on the B team. In any job where you accumulate experience, and it's really easy to see who is not in that like upper echelon or hasn't reached it yet, and then to shit on the people who are aspiring to be where you are. And I think another important thing to realize is like, yeah, there's a lot of assholes in the world, but I think that nobody is usually just an asshole. So they've come there. They've had a story arc. We're all on a story arc. We're all developing our characters. And so it's important to consider it in this way, like I described, because it means that no one is immune to this. And of course, do you think that any of these people who are doing this, I'm a better foreigner than you are, and I'm more accomplished, and what I've done is more prestigious, do you think they were always an asshole? I think that they've taken time to get there. Maybe they were predisposed. Maybe there's an asshole gene, but I think they've developed. And it's something that we could all become if we're not vigilant, because it's a seductive voice, this thing that we've gone through. Let's give the sort of timeline, for example, that there was this thing that you wanted to do, and it was really, really hard. And as you were doing it, you were mocked and made fun of, and struggling to achieve what it was that you wanted to was what seemed out of sight the whole time. But you took your knocks and you finally got there. Now you're on the inside, you're in this in-group, and you've been accepted into a social circle. Now you're inside that social circle, you want to stay there. And what do we often do when we're inside social circles? Well, to be accepted and to continue to reside in that place, we have to mirror the behaviors now of the people within it. And because it's so much fun to mock people's suffering, that's a humanism. That's what people do. I mean, look at small kids, the way that they like love to watch each other suffer. Who is it? I was going to say Bill Murray. No, it's not Bill Murray. Eddie Murphy has a great bit about like kids getting ice cream, and then there's the one poor kid and he doesn't get ice cream, and they're all celebrating. It's like kids are basically, every human are like those kids, tormenting that kid without the ice cream. It's just at different levels. Now, to return to my point where I'm talking about how you've got those people, you're in that group now, you might not agree with it, they're indulging in a little bit of criticism, and you want to stay a part of that group, so you start to do it too. And that's how you end up the villain. And there's tons of people doing that. And I don't think they were all like that. And it's difficult to challenge norms once they're established. There's like cool social experiments done where like people will sit in a group and one person will be given a piece of information and they know that it's right. But like if the whole group disagrees with them, the group pressure will, like 9 times out of 10, that person will yield under that pressure to say, okay, well, I guess maybe that's what's right, even full well knowing that it's wrong, but simply to adhere, to mesh with the group that they are now a part of. The other kind of people that exist with this elitism, I think it doesn't, I've described kind of like a nuanced scenario. I think it's not just that people are assholes, but I would say that it's like, it's nuanced, but less so. That you have somebody who's just insecure. Think of if you've never accomplished anything in your life. Let's get real here. Like the people who are often coming to live in Japan are a bunch of nerds. They're a bunch of outcasts. They're the anime club kids. They're the linguistics majors who were in a dark room studying Japanese for 4 years. They've always been outcasts. Not saying that I'm not one of those people. I'm a diehard nerd. I'm proud of that. But that's the way they lived. They were an anime nerd, and everybody made fun of them. They had the like body pillow. They had the like shirt with ahegao like chicks all over it, and they wore that to school, and they thought it was edgy. And now they finally got something that elevates them, or at least elevates them in their mind, right? This is their first crack at being on top. And if you've never been there, I mean, you've practiced losing a lot, but you've never practiced being successful. Well, to be a gracious, successful person, that's not easy. It's much easier, I would say, to be an asshole. And so they finally get a crack at it. They finally get a chance to be king shit for a day because they got accepted to something like the JET program. And then it turns them into a raging asshole because this is like their little kingdom that they now get a rule over. And I would say as well, I mean, you have to acknowledge with this sort of elitism that happens, it's so easy to be elite behind a keyboard where you can throw out your sweet nothings, your sweet hate onto the internet, and you don't have to be accountable for it in any way. Like, I really do caution people against staring into the abyss, which the internet can be, because it will stare back at you. And I don't expect it to go away either. Like, that's another thing too. This is life. Of course it's going to be there. Of course there's going to be people like that. Analyzing it, sure, it's interesting to talk about it here, but it's never to say that it should go away. It's like that expression, although I do not agree with a single word that you say, I would die for your right to say it. People got a right to be Gaijin Elitism assholes, and it says more about them than it does about you, but they have every right to do it. Nobody should stop them. They're free. And I think especially people are creating their own demons all the time. Like, if you're having a bad experience, not getting into something that you've applied for, probably not the best place to go in the world is onto some sort of message board where you didn't actually measure up to be a part of that community. It's kind of like the thing, if you go looking for failure, you'll find it. If you go looking for problems, you'll find them. Like I have touched on this in other videos, the whole idea that I had somebody write me recently and they were talking about I'm hearing all these negative things about living and teaching in Japan, and I don't know if I should do it now. Can you please just can you reassure me that it's okay? And I was like, I'm not going to reassure you that it's all sunshine and rainbows, but I can reassure you that everybody's having at least their own experience, and that you've oversaturated. I think this is like I say, this is a Japan-centric podcast that we're talking on here, but I like to think that a lot of this stuff is universally applicable. And this idea of oversaturating yourself is very real and exists in anything that you want to do. And what I mean to say is so if you have a concern and you look that up, you're bad experiences in Japan. Well, I mean, the whole point of Google is that it's incredibly efficient at bringing you whatever it is that you've queried. And so you are going to get all that information. And then you click on one of those videos, you hear that bad thing, you're like, really? You click on another one, and another one. And without even realizing it, you're narrowing your perspective. Well, what seems to you at the same time broadening it. You're taking in all this information, but you're not realizing that it's becoming narrower and narrower and narrower in what it's delivering to you in terms of perspective. So that's kind of the final thing that I would add on to this whole thing, where you're looking at kind of a distilled elitism that you're going to find on a message board. But in my experience, I don't actually. I found one guy who was semi-elitist about being in Japan, and it wasn't even to do with his job. It was the way that he traveled, because he was one of these classy. He was one of these classic hipster pieces of shit who loved the smell of his own farts, and got so off on the fact that he didn't go anywhere that was popular with tourists, just this kind of hippie bullshit hipster garbage, where there's a lot of places, tourists go to them, and it's cool. It's okay to like things that are popular. Pop music is okay. But my point is, I'm derailing myself. That that was the exception. That wasn't the rule. And like I'm talking about this abyss that you can stare into. If you go looking for trouble, you find it. I have found overwhelmingly that people who are here are not elitist. And also, like I'm making the point, when you're behind a keyboard, it's a different thing. And when you engage with people one-on-one and you cut to the core of them, Baxter, that you'll find a human being like you would find everywhere else, a real human being. And that can perhaps restore a little bit of faith in humanity. It's usually when we become a mob that people are really off-putting. Not that we can't become that. We certainly can. But people individually, that in my experience, are great. And the elitism thing, I only find if you go looking for it, and all those people might not even be that kind of person if you met them one-on-one. Just like we're all manufacturing personas to some degree. I can't escape it, and I accept it. Of course, like necessarily when I do this, there is a persona that people are engaging with. But as much as I possibly can, I like to think that it's not. Now to like pat myself on the back, because I do think about it. Like as I talk to this camera now, I really do try and think about it as though I had someone sitting in front of me here, and I would be accountable to that person as though they were sitting here. And so that can kind of prevent some of the persona bleeding in. But that's inevitable, and it's not always bad. I think that some people have wonderful personas as well. So that was a really cool question, I thought, about like elitism, because I notice it too, but it's one of those things that you have to be careful where you're like, oh yeah, I hate that so much. But then if you really think for a moment, you're like, how much do I really see it? You know, these things that we get really self-righteous and indignatious about. A righteous indignation. I love that phrase. But if you really think about it, you're like, actually, no, it's not like that. In the context of a great fiery conversation, it's everywhere, this thing that we imagine. But when we really think about it, not really. It's actually, it's a very, very small amount. So thanks very much. That was a cool Patreon question that we got in here. And I was going to say, I mean, I'm answering as many questions as I possibly can, but if you do support me on Patreon, there's my Discord server there, through these emails, anything. I'm 100% day or night there for the people who support me there. I don't want to sound tone deaf as well. I know times are difficult right now for people, but I think I can say that comfortably. Plug my Patreon, because it's always been that only support me if you absolutely feel you can, and for whatever amount that you feel you can. All my rewards for Patreon are not tier locked. Everything is for whatever anyone can support me for, and I really appreciate that. But now let's move on to some of these questions. Okay, I'm going to do them in order of how I've question for the podcast. Ooh, I hope I gotta like move these out. I'm crunk. I'll just hammer through these. We'll go fast. I've been watching YouTube videos and podcasts, and I'm enjoying them thoroughly. I'm moving to Tokyo. I got a scholarship for a university. That's awesome. I was wondering what foodstuffs are good to buy in the convenience stores, and which are best to make yourself. What food is good to buy out, and what is good to make yourself, and where can you buy a used bicycle in Japan? Much love, Kronk. This is awesome. You see, now this is the kind of email that totally indicates to me just how excited somebody is, because of how trivial it is. That it's like this person is not concerned. They're not stressed. They're like, what's fun and cool, and I'm caught up in the excitement of it. And I like that. Like recently, I actually, before I switched, I ran into some people. They didn't let on that they watch my channel. So if you listen to this podcast, why didn't you just tell me that you watched the channel? But I really enjoyed meeting them, because I could tell they were so excited to be here. And I think that's something that I don't do anymore, because I don't have that kind of excitement. I have to be excited about other things. But I love the experience of meeting people who have just arrived. The fresh off the boat person who's excited to be in Japan. That's awesome. That's great. And that's what this is to my mind. So what are the foodstuffs that good to buy in convenience stores? Well, everything, my friend. Everything. Convenience stores are such a culturally wonderful thing here. What though, if I think of like things that I particularly like when I go to the convenience store, well, quickly for you will become famous, the Fami Chiki. I like the spicy Fami Chiki, which is quite good. And of course you would only get that there. You wouldn't get that at home. What other things? I like the Nikuman? Yeah, okay, the Nikuman. So basically the buns, the little like dumpling buns that you can get, Nikuman. Those are really, really awesome. I like that. Food to buy out, like what's some chains I could recommend to you that I like? Well, I like Moss Burger. I like Torikizoku for yakitori. I like Stamina Taro for yakiniku, all you can eat. There you go, Kronk. There's some suggestions for you. Okay, cool. So these are all flagged as important, so I'm going to deflag them to see if I can make it more obvious where they are. I just totally lost where that was. Okay. Okay, just accept that it's gone. Okay. Hey Dave, Lewis from Colorado here. I just found your channel and I'm going through the backlog, so I hope this question hasn't been answered already. No worries. I'll be starting my apprenticeship in a residential electrical soon, but looking at Japan as one of the places I'd consider moving after I achieve my journeyman. Oh, that's interesting. What are your general thoughts on trades in Japan, opportunity and prevalence for people like myself who would most likely coming over as an independent but skilled tradesman? Man, that is a fantastic question. I wish I had a better answer for. I don't know anybody. I know people who've started businesses here. And they're doing cool stuff. But do I know anybody who is a tradesman? I mean, okay, because I lack experience in this, I'm going to have to say mid-sized chungus. That's just an awesome email name. I'm going to have to say perhaps a foreign company that needs you to come over. I don't know how you would get over here as a tradesman, because here's the thing where it sounds like somewhat discouraging, that the bureaucracy here to do things is intense. And so I'd imagine trades have a very specific bureaucracy associated with them. And of course, a massive amount of jargon that goes along with it, right? Like language of the trade. And so if you're going to be a part of that system, you have to be able to speak that language, that lingity. And if you're going to speak that lingity, you're going to have to be at a quite high level, my friend. So I don't want to discourage you, though. I would suggest getting onto something like Glassdoor and seeing if they got options for you there, because I feel like tradesmen are important right now. Tradesmen are always important, but how to exactly penetrate the Japanese market is, that's a good question, my friend. That is a good question, mid-sized chungus. Lewis. All right, moving along. How did I lose that first one? That's what gets me. Okay. Okay, let's see. I was looking at several apartment tour videos, started with yours, fell down a rabbit hole, and repeated the motif. Lack of dryers in Japan. Yeah. Oh, okay. Investing in a Panda portable dryer would be worth the hassle, or is it burning yen? Just a quick question. If I were to do, like now I've got, like I do the Japanese thing where I'm outside, I'm going to hang my stuff up just outside on my balcony. But if you're really desperate, you just go to one of the dozens of coin laundries in Japan, and it's not a lot of money. And if you got, like, say, for example, your sheets that you want to do and you don't want to have to take forever, there you go. So I would suggest that. Okay, next. Let's move up here. We're down. Okay, I think I'm going to prioritize these for I didn't realize Realize. I didn't realize I actually had a pretty big backup of these before, some from February. Ouch. Okay, moving along though. Okay, this says, this is from Rob. He says, I would really like to know your thoughts on developing etiquette living in Japan. I'm currently at a university and there's a mixture of behavior. Sometimes people disregard Japanese etiquette, not intentionally, but they let slip some of them. But they let slip some of the subtlety that makes interactions smoother no matter the level of Japanese. I don't assume people should know basic Japanese culture from the start. Over time, we all get lazy and allow ourselves to justify not being as good as we humanly could. I think this could be a really cool video because people's approaches are quite broad. Well, here it's made its way into a video, Rob. As far as Japanese etiquette goes, I think that there's a real give and take there, and the Japanese are awesome about it for the most part. That you're held to a different standard because not like looking down on you, but if somebody doesn't know how long you've lived here, if I didn't know how long somebody had lived in Canada, why would I hold them up to the same standard of social niceties that, especially if it was like a heavily codified one that I knew that the rest of the world didn't do, why would I assume that they would fall in line so quickly? So that's extended. Now, it becomes a personal thing then, because now you are responsible that you've been extended that olive branch and that people aren't going to shit on you for not immediately understanding how things are. That it's sort of like if somebody doesn't know that they're being an asshole, well, you could kind of forgive them of that. But once you know that you're being an asshole, well, then don't be an asshole because you're aware of it now, and it actually makes it more of a trespass, more of a slight. I don't know what I would say here. But once you're aware of it, then yeah, it's important that you actually address it. So at first, awesome. Be forgiving of people who don't yet know the etiquette, especially because it's codified and it's quite specific and detailed in a way that is unusual. But then once you do learn these things, yeah, you should be doing the best that you can to observe them. You live in that culture. So why not respect its traditions? The ones that are worth respecting. Perhaps there are some elements in the culture that are worth disregarding, and people within the culture actually look to you to disregard, and they just want somebody to stand up for it, and you can kind of be the standard bearer in that sense of somebody doing something a little bit different, and you can, because you're an outsider, leading the charge to change. So take that one out. Okay, and we will finish on this question. So this is Brian. He says, from San Antonio. Cool. I had a very simple question. What is your diet like? What kind of things do you normally eat to stay healthy? So I usually get up in the morning. I have all bran. And we're talking like not all bran flakes. We're talking all bran because I like to be regular, much as possible. And then in the afternoon, I really do treat lunch as like a just get me through. I supplement there at lunch with whatever I can have. And I think I probably have like unusually small lunches compared to most people, but it's because I got fat when I was living back in Canada and I ate Subway at a sedentary job and turned into a blimp and lost the love of my life at that time. And it was not a good experience. So I eat light lunches. And for dinner, I have like unintentionally, but just because it's what works for me, like I guess it would be kind of a keto thing where I don't have any carbs. I do like, I read this book about lifespan recently talking about the health benefits of different foods, one of which is red onions that stimulates this serotonin circuit in your body, blah, 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 telomerase, blah, 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 telomeres, epigenome, words, jargon, all this cool stuff. So basically, let's get back into specifically what I eat. So it is chicken. It is... Cut off again. I'm having too much fun talking here. So it is chicken. I have my chicken. That's a big one for me. Green vegetables. Green vegetables to be healthy and to be regular. And ginger, garlic, red onions. And that's like my simple thing. And the chicken, I used to do like 300, 400 grams of protein. I cut that in half. So I'm having like 250 grams of chicken. And then I do, from a book that I read about telomeres, I do supplement as well. So the supplements that I take are vitamin B6, B12, folic acid, vitamin E, the omega-3 oils like DHA or whatever they are. I think I said vitamin D. Yeah, B6, B12, folic acid, vitamin E, fish oils, and vitamin D. And that's what I do. And it keeps me in pretty good shape. And as far as training is concerned, I go to the gym. I do a lot of interval training, high intensity interval training for cardio to keep the heart strong. It's been so awesome having one of these fitness watches now that I can like record my sleep and heart rate. I love that stuff. It's so cool. This has been obviously a lot of fun. I keep going overtime and getting cut off by my camera here, but I really enjoyed it. I'll be back. I have a commitment to you and to myself that in this month, it's the 16th, but I will release, come hell or high tide, I'm going to do 3 more podcasts. The schedule will be 4 podcasts a month, interspersed with the other content that's going up on the channel. I really appreciate you dropping by. I hope you do like the video. I hope you do, if you haven't already, subscribed and hit that bell notification. And finally, that you might consider supporting me on Patreon, because it helps little channels, small channels like mine, get by. And I won't bore you with the details of that because it's all available on the channel itself. You guys are great. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for tuning in. Take care out there. Look after the ones that you love, and I'll catch you in the next one.